So last class we set up Pygame. And you might be wondering what we're gonna do with that. Like, I didn't give you homework last class. I spent all of the last 30 minutes, just to help you setting up Pygame. Well, we're actually pretty close to making uh to make your first game, to be honest. Because so far our objective for for this course along the way has been doing programs that are interactive, programs that relies on the user telling it to do something and then you react to that user input. And that is actually the fundamental basics of nowadays video games. Like, video games requires you to do something in order to the game to respond with something else. Or in other words, video games are a prime example of event-driven or interactive programs. So that's why we needed Pygame. So as you can probably see from the name itself, Pygame. It's a Python library about games, which is going to be our today's objective. It's going to be an introduction about how to use Pygames and also create some really rudimentary graphics. We are not going to be able to create a game right now, but at least we'll be getting something, you know, graphical, graphical, and also probably something moving, depending on how we proceed in today's class. And also for today's class, I'm going to be using the textbook for reference material, and also I'm going to ask you to share your screen. Actually, no, not share your screen. But more like I'll be asking you to immediately copy down what I type on the screen so that you can try it on your side. And it's really important that you try this on your side because otherwise you won't be able to see the changes. And then report back to me what do you see. So it's going to be like a really slow paced class today. Hopefully you enjoy it because you'll get more times to get, to try the hands on. So this is a bit of an introduction. I have stated some of them at the beginning of the class. A lot of the programs I've made so far are interactive, and some of them are based on Turtle. Some of them are not relying on Turtle. And for those that are not relying on Turtle, those are text-based, like you type stuff into the prompt. And to be honest, if you use modern aesthetic, like you use aesthetic judges for modern programs, those are pretty ugly and unintuitive. And if you think about what are beautiful or and also intuitive programs to use nowadays, well, they're mostly graphical, right? And think about all the programs on your iPad. None of them ask you to, just none of it relies on, just you type in characters. They all have, this kind of graphical buttons that you can click on them, drag them, and so on. In other words, we want to create programs that are graphically interactive. So what does this kind of program contain? They contain buttons, text boxes, for you to type in some text if you really need to, menus that display a list of options, and etc. And we call these graphical components that handles user interaction graphical user interface. Let me repeat the word again, graphical user interface. This is a really important terminology because this is going to be what we're really dealing with basically for the rest of, for sure this class, but maybe this term as well. So again, what is a graphical user interface? Graphical user interface, short for GUI, you can pronounce it as GUI, are basically whatever graphical components in your program that can handle your user interaction or sometimes to display information. Let's give you some example about GUI. For example, this entire PowerPoint program is dependent on the GUI. For example, this button called arrange, is a GUI component. It's a button that I can click on. This text box that I can use to type in what I want to search for is also a GUI component. Or to be honest, everything that you use on modern computers are GUI. But what is not GUI based? Well, I'll give you an example. This. This is, you probably have not seen this. Oh, actually, I probably briefly showed you how to use this something in last class, but this is what is called a CLI, command line interface. So it is basically the opposite of graphical user interface. It solely relies on you typing in character or textual commands, to ask you to do something. For example, if I wanted to display all the files that I have, if you're on Windows, which is based on GUI, you can just click on this button and, it opens up File Explorer. It displays all the files you have. For example, all these wonderful PowerPoints as, graphical icons that I can click on. However, in CLI, command line interface, I have to do all the thing by typing. For example, ls mean list directory. That is an example of CLI. I have to type in stuff using text, and it displays stuff using text also. And also, strictly speaking, the programs that you made, for example, let me just quickly print hello. So this little program that I just made is also an example of CLI, command line interface, because again, it is an interactive program, but it is solely based on typing in text. There's no graphics involved here. So you can probably already see that CLI or command line interface, well, it is really non-intuitive. Especially for those that are not into programming, that have never learned programming before, it will be a gigantic pain in the butt to use it. However, for a program that's based on GUI, graphical user interface, like this PowerPoint making program, well, even if someone have never used this before, they can probably guess out like 50% of how to use it just by looking at all these beautiful icons, figuring out how to interpret them, and so on. Right, that was a little bit about GUI and CLI. So why am I talking about GUI all of a sudden? Because that's what we're going to be making. And how we're going to make it? We're going to use it. We're going to use a library called Pygame that we just set it up last class to help you make GUI easily. By the way, it's not only for making GUI, not only for making buttons and so on. It's also good for making animation. Not the animations that you're expecting from cartoons, though. Specifically, it is the animation that you can expect from games, video games. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And so right now, what I want you to do is to open up your Python shell right now, because we'll be doing stuff. We're going to be trying something really quick. I want you to open up your Python shell right now. Open up a new editor and try out this program that I have on my screen.